Now, the United States claims to have hit hundreds of targets across Iran, with the country's military releasing video of what it called bold action to eliminate imminent threats posed by the Iranian regime. Another video showed stationary aircraft on the ground, including fighter jets and drones, being hit by strikes. Meanwhile, the Israeli military said it was carrying out large-scale strikes in the heart of Tehran and also bombing across Lebanon against Hezbollah, the armed group tied to Iran's Islamic Republic. Explosions were heard in Beirut, and at least 31 people were reportedly dead. Now, this after Hezbollah said in a statement that it had fired rockets and drones at Israel in retaliation for what it called the pure blood of Khamenei. Iran, on the other hand, continues its counterattacks on Israel and U.S. bases in West Asia. In Israel, explosions have been heard in parts of Tel Aviv without air raid siren warning. The source of explosions is still unclear. Israel's rescue services said 5 people were wounded in Jerusalem after missiles were fired from Iran. An Iranian missile attack in central city of Beit Shemesh killed at least 9 and injured dozens more. In Bahrain, a fire broke out on a foreign ship undergoing maintenance in the Salman industrial city. According to the country's Ministry of Interior, it was caused by debris from an intercepted missile, resulting in the death of an Asian worker and serious injuries to 2 others. A thick smoke was also seen rising above the capital city of Manama. The fire was reportedly coming from the naval base used by U.S. military force. The base is home to the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet. Iran-backed militias in Iraq said they had struck American bases in Erbil with drone and rockets in retaliation to U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. And to discuss more, we are now being joined live by former director of the National Security Council's Secretariat, Dr. Tara Karta from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, I would first like to take your opinion on how is India looking at this West Asian region and this conflict, because many of these Gulf states are key trading partners for India. How is India looking at this?
See, first, I think the Prime Minister has just given a message in support of Oman. Because, Oman is very, very close to us. Plus, I think Oman has a certain standing in the whole region. They are the most possible neutral persons you can find. So it's a very sad thing that they've also been hit. Number 2 is obviously the fact that they are some of our largest trading partners are there. So any instability there is, I think the Prime Minister has said this innumerable number of times that please, this is not the time for war. And he said it in Israel also, please go ahead and have that, the peace. When he went to Israel recently, he backed the peace accords. So, and third, and obviously the most important is not the most important, but which is of immediate seriousness, is the fact that a bunch of our nationals are stuck there. We're going to get them back. Now, that means they have to negotiate some pause in this war. It's been done before. It can be done. The trouble is, we don't know whom to talk to in Iran. Because apparently, from what we've heard recently, that some of those strikes against Oman in particular was not sanctioned by the quote-unquote authority. That's what the foreign minister had said. So if the IRG is on its own, this new person who's been appointed, his name I think is Wahidi, Ahmad Wahidi. If he's in charge, who is in charge? If you want to negotiate to an aircraft to get your citizens out, a pause, unclear. And finally, of course, it's the fact that the energy, I think it's already it's gone up to $76 or more, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to climb. And that for us is extremely serious.
And especially when you talk about these energy, we're talking about also the Strait of Hormuz. When it comes to India, how do you analyze India in this whole, in trading with oil or gas? Even for that matter, gasoline prices seems to be going up as well. And analysts do say that this conflict involving major oil production in Iran, they could be severely, that could impact global oil flows. Where does India stand on that? And how does India get impacted with this?
And we've considerably increased our strategic reserves. I mean, from the past, and we had about 10 days, now it's up to 76 or 78 days. But that is it. What happens after that? So you do have, we 50% of our energy imports come from that region, comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So obviously, I mean, while I appreciate Israel's position. The fact is, it's going to affect my economy. Then it is a very serious problem for me, and therefore, I think the efforts from Delhi is going to be to negotiate an end to this as soon as possible. Talk to everybody involved, including the GCC countries. We have got very, very good relations with them. But the trouble is, again, like I say, whom does one talk to? You know, I'm not even sure what is the position in Israel. What is the end game? Basically, that's what I cannot understand and have not understood from the beginning of this war.
Absolutely.
What is your objective?
Well, this, of course, is a question which, of course, everyone has been asking, what is the end goal? Because when we look at Trump's comments, he's been referring to a regime change as such. So on that terms, when it comes to regime change, how does this global power shift? So when we look at, how, as of now, China and Russia are major allies of Iran, considering the fact that they were allies of not just Iran, but also the regime. When it comes to, how this, if there's a regime change, how do you analyze this global shift that may happen soon?
Oh, it will certainly be a major shift. In the sense of, look, I hold no quarter for any regime that supports terrorism. They didn't support terrorism against India, but on principle, anyone who supports terrorism is not my cup of tea. In this shift which can take place, generally research shows that any decapitation exercise, usually in the short term, produces a worse result than you started off with. So the next lot will 90% be much worse than what this Khomeini was. So that's why I said I don't see an immediate end to this. I mean, there will probably be more killings of people as they come up, if they are extreme, if they are part of the Khomeini, the inner circle, until someone comes who is acceptable to everyone, which has to be a prepared exercise. I mean, there's no point Trump telling the people, elect your own leader. It doesn't happen like that. There is, the assumption is, and this is how it works, is that there is already somebody pre-positioned to take over at a suitable point of time, who may come in and do, sort of calm things down. And I'm pretty sure a bunch of people will be happy with that in Iran itself. But there will be, and there is, and there will continue to be, a significant hardline faction who will still want the same things that Khomeini stood for. That is where the problem is. And they're not just in Iran, they are in the rest of the world. I mean, he was the leader for Shias everywhere.
Absolutely.
So it's not finished.
Right. Also, when we talk about, comments coming in from, for example, Larijani, who says that, we're not going to be negotiating, but we also have Iranian foreign minister who said that that Iran's armed forces are now independent and somewhat isolated. How much of you do you agree on this? That has Iran isolated? But when we look at how much power, because when we look at the missiles that Iran has been throwing at all these Gulf states, it seems to be endless at this point. So do you think they have isolated themselves? How do you analyze Iran's stand of view, and how long can Iran go for?
See, the regime was a very curious one. I mean, you had Khomeini on top who decided everything. It was not a classic, autocratic rule. There was a bunch of structures beneath him which worked on pretty much on their own. Though he was the final arbiter, like the IRGC, for instance. It has its own way of thinking, its own functioning, its own powers. It's got massive powers. So if they're not listening to Larijani or to the foreign minister, that's not surprising. Because right now, the flavor of the next at least 15, 20 days, the flavor of that will be revenge. We need to get revenge for the death of Khomeini. So anybody Larijani also doesn't have the space to say, let's go and talk to the US. Who's going to back it? I mean, in a position where you've been attacked, how do you, I mean, which politician will have the courage to go and say, okay, let's go and talk to the US? Who has that courage? So you get what I'm saying? I mean, you need to create that kind of a situation where the Iran feels they've done sufficient damage to the US or to Israel, and then they are in a position to talk. Right? No, so that we haven't reached it. The US has not achieved its objectives yet, presumably. The Iran certainly has not, because they are bent on revenge and extracting as much blood and bloodshed as they can. Until somewhere that balance is reached, they are not going to talk.